If I face the origin stories of narratives that I need to rescript, do I lose the talent? Andy, behind that origin story, he had built phenomenal skills, to speak and persuade and to compel and to be visionary. And of course, the terror he has to contend with is, if I stop talking and persuading, am I going to have less impact? Will I be less relevant? I had to contend with, if I reconcile the origin stories that I need to wrestle with, do I become less effective? Do I become less influential? Of course, the answer is no. You get to keep all that ability that you developed. You just get to repurpose it and not activate it for the wrong reasons. But that's all you have to learn, all that.
Yeah. Hello again, folks, and welcome to The Unknown Path, the podcast where you hear stories of the unique grit and determination behind quote-unquote overnight success. The unlikely synchronicities, the coincidences and connections, the untraveled roads forged one step at a time, the trials and tribulations, the hard knocks and the celebrations. This is an authentic sharing of human stories. So today's guest was introduced to me by a mutual friend and our mutual agent, Scott Miller. And Scott said, "Oh, you just have to get this guy on your show. You're going to love him. And he's got some wonderful stories to share." So I am sitting here now with Mr. Ron Carucci. Ron is a US-based leadership consultant, author and executive advisor, the co-founder and managing partner of Navalent, a global leadership and organisational consulting firm. For more than 3 decades, Ron has worked alongside CEOs and senior leadership teams around the world, helping organisations navigate growth, transformation, and cultural change. Sounds like a man after my own heart. Ron is the author of several best-selling books, including Rising to Power and To Be Honest, and is a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review and Fast Company, where his writing focuses on the human side of leadership: trust, truth, accountability, and purpose. He is also a 3 times TEDx speaker. Mr. Ron Carucci, hello and welcome to the Unknown Path podcast.
Jim Fuller, what a pleasure. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah. Hey, just before we came on air, we were piecing it together that we'd been introduced by Scott. Shout out to you, Scott. I'll tag you in the show notes of this one. And you were sharing with me, well, maybe you can just share again the champagne story.
Yeah. Well, Scott's been working on a book with me for the last 3 years, mostly his advocacy for a book that stemmed from a lunch conversation he and I had years ago at a conference that made him become enamored with the topic of origin stories. He still is. And now you see him writing a lot about it on his posts. And I, when we started the process, my ambivalence about this book has not been subtle, but he was, as you know, he's incredibly persistent. And so I wanted to send him his favorite champagne when we finally sold the book, and he did finally sell the book. And I've had this champagne bottle. It's not rare, but it's in my cart online for like over a year. And then I went to send it, and I found out you actually can't send champagne to Utah. What in the world? Like, the state doesn't allow. They have a monopolistic grip on alcohol sales at the state level, and you can only go buy it in their state monopolized stores.
Wow.
You can't even call the store and order it over the phone. You have to be in the store. So I would literally have to send someone to Utah to go buy the champagne and deliver it to Scott's house. What is that?
Uber? Dial an Uber?
I'm actually literally going to have to figure out how to either do Uber Eats or Uber whatever.
Yeah.
I can go online and find out what store has it in Utah.
Yeah.
But that's all I can do.
Or you could jump on a plane.
I could probably, would be the easiest and quickest thing to do, is just be on a plane to Salt Lake City myself.
Yeah.
And deliver to his house and then get back on a plane and come home. That would probably be the quickest thing I could do.
Well, if you're gonna do that, I reckon that you should deliver it to his house, put it on ice, hang out, spend some time together until it gets cold, and then pop the cork on it together.
And then drink it.
And then drink it together. When Scott and I had met, and then, at some point he said, "Hey, Jem, I'd like to represent you here in the States, as your literary agent, speaker agent. And I said, "Oh, Scott, if you're serious about that, then to show you that I'm serious, I'll jump on a plane and I'll fly over to have lunch with you in Utah, to talk about it and seal the deal." And he said,
Australia.
from Australia, and he said, "Don't fly all the way to Utah, but if you want to fly to LA, my business partner's in Newport Beach. Why don't you do that?" And so I did. And so I got on a plane to have lunch with Scott Miller. I think that impressed him. I think he was like, "I like this Aussie bloke." And so,
I mean, somebody who flies from Australia to LA for lunch,
yeah.
it's clearly signaling they are committed.
That's right. So we did that. And the reason that I thought of that, Ron, is because we got to lunch early, 11 a.m., but it wasn't too early. It was the perfect time for Scott to open a nice bottle of champagne and celebrate. So we did.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So, mate, you talk about origin stories. How would you encapsulate your origin story?
Oh, gosh. So I'm not sure that your listeners in Australia would understand this, but if you ever watch The Sopranos, American show, you think you're watching fiction. For me, it's like watching Thanksgiving.
Wow.
I grew up in the youngest of five in a very classic New York Italian home that looks just like that. You know, intensity, loudness, violence, all of it. And so when you grow up in that environment, there's implications. So that was my origin story, was that world. I was a precocious kid. I was, you know, the recipient of all of that intensity, a lot of love, and a lot of physical, what my therapist later told me was violence. I thought, what's it violent? We're just Italian. I don't, it's a big deal. Well, you said you were bleeding.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that created my own set of armor that to this day I still, am working through and working to take off. And began my career in the arts. And that was very different, far away from what I do today. But I learned that I bored easily. And my friends would be so enamored with and jealous of these great jobs I would get, and I would probably think to myself, "Wait, I have to do the same thing 8 times a week for how long?" And learned quickly that was probably not gonna be a field that could sustain me for a whole life.
Yeah.
So I I left New York City, and went, and toured with a company that used the arts to teach, that used the arts to train and shape leadership. We had a contract with the US military. We toured all over Europe, and the Middle East. And it was there that I began to discover, um, the difference between telling great stories and engaging people in their story. And how the latter, I don't know that I could have articulated this at the moment, but that would never get boring.
Yeah.
Uh, so I came back to the United States. I thought I had discovered a whole field. Turns out the field had existed for many years.
Yeah.
I was just a little bit late to the party, and pivoted my career, went back and got more training, and began my career in this field.
Yeah. And so just to give the listeners a bit of some context in the present day. So as we're recording this, it's December 2025. We're approaching Christmas, and this probably will come out in early 26. So just to give our listeners a bit of the landscape for you, what are you spending your time on these days? What's the balance of time?
Traipsing alongside leaders who are in the midst of profoundly messy change.
Mm.
And we're a 21-year-old firm, so we're legal now. And what the one of the many patterns that we've noticed over the 21 years is that when the world gets crazier, we get busier. 2008, the economy tanked. We couldn't stop the phone from ringing. 2015 was insane. We were busy. The pandemic came and we were busier. And of course, this last year was probably the most insane year of anybody's life. And we've already booked all the revenue for 2026 that we did in 2025.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a wonderful problem to have. It's still a problem, but most of those projects had to do with leaders grasping for a semblance of certainty, some semblance of predictability amidst such turbulence, economic turbulence, sociopolitical turbulence, technological turbulence, all kinds of disruptions. Our job is to help them craft that transformation journey in a way that allows them and their people to thrive, allows their strategies to come to life, allows them to compete and win in places they want to compete and win, whether that's through articulation of strategy, a redesign of the organization, or a recreation of their leadership for who may not be equipped or calibrated to do what they've been asked to do. And we don't view strategy, where are we going, organization, how are we built to get there, and leadership, who's taking us there, as three things. We see that as one thing. Because if you try and separate any of those parts and try and shape them apart from the others, you make things worse. Yeah, the marketplace marketplace buys those as different things, but if you do those in an incoherent way, if you shape the direction and the competitive distinction of who you want to be, if you build the machinery to deliver that strategy, and then you shape the leaders to lead you there, apart from each other, you end up with a very confused Frankenstein organization that looks strange and is misaligned and confused and has a lot of friction in it. So we do those things as one integrated thing, not three.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm guessing this, I might be wrong, but I'm guessing that your approach to it really is the congruency between those three as the human in the loop, right? Because in every aspect, it's the human's ability to actually show up that then determines the effectiveness of a strategy or the effectiveness of, the organization, the delivery of the leadership, all of that sort of stuff is the human stuff. And over the years, I'm also guessing that you must have experienced what it's like to be an instrumental part in helping a human unlock or expand into their potential as well, and really have some profound changes for them personally and professionally. Is that fair?
And including, probably about 6 years ago, I began to detect the need to do a little bit deeper work. When I would see a leader, bright, sharp, thoughtful, caring, like not a jerk, but struggling to change a behavior or adopt a new behavior, no matter how much we practiced, no matter how much technique or tool we offered, there was always regression back to something different or something most familiar to them. And that's when I began to realize and started my long journey now. I've spent the last 3 years in intensive training in trauma-informed leadership and neuroscience and how our bodies store memories and how we, our imprints guide us. In fact, there's an organization in your neighborhood called the Center for Healing, run by some incredible leaders and trainers in the area of trauma and leadership. I've loved their work. So part of my training was with them.
Right.
So I would realize that the reason for this regression just meant that there was a longer tail on what purpose a problematic behavior was serving. And unless we went back and visited that origin story and how the imprint showed up in the first place, I was probably not going to have much success in changing the behavior or helping them be more effective. So here's an example. One leader I worked with, his name was Andy. He was a CEO of a very successful branding company. Started the company after college with some friends, grown it exponentially. He was quite successful 15 years in. And he was beloved by his company. He was energetic. He was affable. He was brilliantly insightful. He was creative. And he could not stop talking.
Right.
He could not allow others to have a voice. Any sense of pushback or challenge was met with even a more intensified use of his voice. He'd already lost a marriage over it. He was losing this team as the organization scaled. It was beyond his reach. He needed to have leaders who could be empowered, and they were exhausted by him. I was the third executive coach in a series of folks that had tried to help him. And in all of my interviews to get my data, I would hear things about his creative genius and his incredible capacity to influence and compel and inspire and persuade. And I also would hear things, people would say, but he's never going to change. And I would say, well, why do you say that? And they would just say, well, because he's Andy. So they had lost hope. So I wanted to get Andy out of that environment and bring him to a place where he would have to sort of really focus on him. We took him away to the part of the country at the time I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a sort of a 4-day intensive to really just immerse himself in his own story. And on the second day, I said, Andy, somewhere in your life, you learned that you are safe when you're talking and that you're even safer when you're persuading. Where do you imagine you would have learned that? And my clients, whenever I ask questions like that, they never struggle with the answer. They instantly understand and what the answer. They struggle to pick which story to tell first.
Right.
He didn't skip a beat. He said third grade, and I said, "Tell me about third grade." He said, "When I was in kindergarten, going into first grade, I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, and I stuttered, and so I would have to go every day after school to special training." Where I would get help so that I could keep up with the curriculum and keep learning with my peers. In third grade, I changed schools. And in the new school, those classes were not held after school. They were held in the middle of the day at noon when everybody else went out to recess. I had to go to those classes. And every day I would have to walk past all of my mocking, jeering, sniding peers down to what they all fondly referred to as the stupid classroom. Every day for the next 3 years. And I could see water pooling in his eyes. So I knew that we were onto something really important. And I said, I am so sorry. That sounds so painful. I said, I would suspect that every day you walk down that hall past all that mockery and that cruelty that nobody stopped and should have. I suspect you may have privately made yourself a promise or made a vow. Do you remember what that would have been? And he went to speak and he literally couldn't talk. Like he just got stuck. You know, the man of all kinds of words could not articulate himself. And so he wrote on a piece of paper and pushed it across the table to me. And it said, I will never let them see that I'm stupid. Now, what fascinated me was it didn't say I'm going to prove to them that I'm smart.
Yeah.
The screenshot his nervous system took was you are stupid and now you have to hide it.
Yeah.
And so he spent the next 40 years of his life perfecting the ability to hide his dirty secret about being stupid behind incredibly persuasive ideas and being compellingly inspirational and talking everybody off their point of view. And any pushback on his ideas was a threat of exposure. People will see you're stupid. Any challenging or independent thinking on the part of his leaders was a sign that he wasn't needed and therefore exposable as stupid. So at this point, he's very emotional. I said, Andy, what's interesting is that in all the interviews, I heard creative genius, I heard brilliant, I heard intelligent, I heard impeccable skill. Not one person questioned your intelligence, not even close. So the very rejection you think you're avoiding by proving that you're not stupid is the rejection you're actually causing. And I think that whatever purpose those behaviors served to protect you from being exposed as something you're not, maybe that's no longer serving a purpose anymore. And maybe we can think about letting yourself be at ease and letting people enjoy your brilliance without you needing to ward off exposure to something that isn't there. So I sent him off. I said, go in the woods, get some relax, get some fresh air, just regulate, get some breath.
Yeah.
I come back, but I love for you to think about where you're gone. If you could go back down that hallway again with that little boy and you could change the promise, what would you promise this time? So he came back after like maybe 2-3 hours and he's calmer and more regulated again. And he went to the whiteboard and he wrote, I am smart and I am safe when I am silent.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's go ahead about making that true.
Yeah.
And he's not perfect, but he worked really hard, but he had to then recalibrate what it meant in a meeting when someone challenged his ideas. And he had to learn to see that as not a threat, but as a compliment.
Yeah.
That he had stiffed the table and invited voices. When somebody offered an idea he didn't think of, he needed to see that as evidence of him doing his job, not evidence that people were going to expose him for being stupid. And so he had to recalculate all that math in his head about how he was calibrating the environment and reading the room. And he'd regress and slip back when his nervous system was just automatically programmed. And so he had to deprogram that and delete those screenshots and create new maps and new ways to navigate the world. And, it was a bumpy process.
Yeah.
I think to this day, he would still say, I don't always get it right, but I think now he really enjoys the idea that his job is to unleash the voices of others, not to drown those voices out with his own.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. What a great story. And, from that, coaching conversation, but obviously relationship and coaching, the ripple effects then that go from that, and these beautiful ripples that go out, and the number of people that are positively impacted by being around this enigmatic individual, is just beautiful. And so, the impact of your work goes beyond the people that you even meet, which is so lovely. Speaking about going back, if you could go back to your 7-year-old or thereabouts, somewhere around there, to little Ron growing up in that beautiful Italian family in New York, and it was passionate and intense and emotional, and like that. If you could go back and just find him in a moment when he was happy, he's playing a game, he was just happy and innocent, and you could share something with that little Ron, something that would amaze him about his own life, something that when he would stop and go, "You what? You mean I get to do what?" What would you share with him that would amaze or delight him about his life?
Well, I think I might first tell him many of the things you're going to be afraid of, you don't need to be afraid of.
Mm.
Many of the fears you have of repeating some of the painful things you experienced as a 5-year-old, as an 8-year-old, you don't have to recreate those. And please make sure somebody knows that you're in pain. Don't harbor that for your whole life.
Yeah.
And then I might tell him that if you get to do that, your impact in the world will be even greater, because right now you're going to aim to play small because you're afraid of the pain that you've experienced.
Yeah.
And so you gotta make yourself smaller than you need to.
Yeah.
So I would tell him to make sure to go ask for help. Ask somebody to help him untangle some of the messes of that Italian family.
Yeah.
And what the implications were, so that when he got older, he didn't feel like he had to hide.
Yeah. So you've had to hide, and you didn't there was a time when you didn't know to ask for help and you played small.
Mhm.
How full on did that get for you? Were there times where you really couldn't see the way forward at all, or what was it like for you?
I think you learn to fake it. You learn to put on a mask and put on some armor and convince the world you're okay, convince the world you're, confident, but inside there's a very different reality. It wasn't until much later in my life that I understood why that was the case,
Yeah.
and then had to begin the process of trying to reconcile those
Mm.
realities. And I think we spend our whole life doing that,
Mm.
integrating the parts of ourselves. If you've done any, internal family systems, we have parts, and trying to figure out what those exiled parts are hiding from and what those protector parts are protecting people from.
Mm.
And Andy's protector part was speaking. Mine was performing.
Mm.
Uh, and you eventually find out how to show up more yourself, more humanly,
Mm.
less armored, less plastic.
Mm. Mm. What was one of the, at the time, painful, but then with the benefit of hindsight, the biggest opportunity for your own learning and growth? What was something in your life that, really, really stuck out as quite full on for you?
Uh, huh. I think early in my, it's funny. I can use the word career now, but I don't think I really understood that word. But when I came back to the United States and switched fields, I didn't know that talent was something that you had and that you could cultivate and get better at. I didn't understand that. I worked hard. I had a strong work ethic, but I began to. I was incredibly blessed to have my first boss in my first corporate job be incredibly gracious and generous and saw in me something I did not understand I had. And he gave me incredible opportunities. And I began to realize the correlation between working hard and getting better at something and how much more money you could earn, and how much more impact you could have. These dots began to connect. I was very, it's probably my late 20s now and newly married, and trying to, thinking about starting a family and what that would mean to support them. And suddenly I began to understand how the cause and effect relationship between growth and learning and impact and advancing your career. Now, I didn't. I also realized that that was also creating some other armor, right? I could hide behind accomplishments and achievements as also a way to mask things I didn't want to attend to. But the upside of that was I developed some wonderful skills and some wonderful capabilities that, then for the next 35 years, have enabled me to do amazing things in the world with people that I love and care about and my firm, and to make a difference for people like Andy. I think like Andy, the thing you have to then reconcile is if I i- if I face the origin stories of narratives that I need to rescript, do I lose the talent? Andy, behind that origin story, he had built phenomenal skills, to speak and persuade and to compel and to be visionary. And of course, the terror he has to contend with is if I stop talking and persuading, am I going to have less impact? Will I be less relevant? I had to contend with if I reconcile the origin stories that I need to wrestle with, do I become less effective? Do I become less influential? Of course, the answer is no. You get to keep all that ability that you developed. You just get to repurpose it and not activate it for the wrong reasons. But that's all you have to learn all that.
Yeah, yeah. Were you ever activating not the wrong reasons as in morally wrong, but just the wrong reasons as in barking up the wrong tree, we say here in Australia. I don't know if you say that over there, but you know what, you're trying to make something happen in a direction and it's not the direction that's meant for you. Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely. Still do. I think we all have idols we make of certain things in our life. Writing I've had a very complicated relationship with writing. I love to write, and it's an idol for me. It's a place where I want, I've overworked to seek validation from it in ways that it should never provide, and wanted it to be an emblem of my significance in a way it shouldn't be,
Right.
and to be evidence of my value in ways that it can't. And so I spent years trying to disentangle after wrecking my mental health through it. Um, right, years trying to sort of disentangle a, a sacred skill that I love,
Mm.
and I'm good at, but not to need it to do something it shouldn't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And just one last question, kind of in this area. And the reason that I'm asking more is because I know there are people who listen to stories of quote unquote success, and they hear of this guy, Ron Carucci, who's got this 21-year successful leadership consultancy, and he's a 3 times TEDx speaker, multiple times best, etc. Right? They see the placard and go, "Oh, wow, I wish I could do that," kind of thing. And I really am interested in that it takes a lot of twists and turns and a lot of hard work and a lot of redirection and a lot of stuff, And you mentioned in there, Ron, that, when you were barking up some of the wrong trees, or at least you were trying to get what you thought you needed in the wrong places, and that it wrecked your mental health in times. People's mental health being wrecked can look different for different people. Everyone's got their own version of it. What was your version of a wrecked mental health?
It was depression. It was sadness. It was anxiety. It was striving, like intense effort to achieve, way overachieve, and which was on a loop. Excessive achievement doesn't satisfy you. Feel depressed, feel anxious, feel self-contempt, rinse and repeat. And I think many people are in that hedonic treadmill, as Arthur Brooks calls it. And our enoughness barometers are miscalibrated. We're looking for enoughness of ourselves in our financial success, in our social media followers, in the trophy room, whatever your trophy room is. And your enoughness will never, ever be there. We have to, seek our significance in the number of people we've loved and the people we've been able to help and the times we've skinned our knees and learned and recovered.
Yeah.
Our sense of significance will never come from any kind of scoreboard.
Yeah.
And we all wanted to. And of course, even just the way you're noting what your listeners might be doing is comparing themselves to me. It's already a lost cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm the wrong yardstick.
Yeah, because you're not them or the person, whoever you're comparing yourself to is not you.
And
then
I probably look at them and do the same thing. I wish I could be them.
Yeah.
So, if you're somebody who is looking for the sense of significance that tells you you're enough, you're okay, you've achieved, you've arrived, you're now validated in the world, now you've earned their respect, you've now earned, I actually have an article in one of my HBR articles that actually was pretty popular called Why Success Doesn't Lead to Satisfaction. And it's about how do we recalibrate our enoughness barometers.
Yeah.
And re-aim them at things that are worth measuring.
Yeah.
Off the treadmill of, seeking achievement and notoriety and financial success and other means as evidence of our value, and look in other places. As to sort of quote the old country western song, looking for significance in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
But we have a whole world that trains us in that, don't we?
Yeah.
We have social media platforms, we have billboards, we have advertising, we have all kinds of help.
Yeah.
Triggering our dopamine sensors to engorge us with delight momentarily.
Yep.
Because of what the world tells us we should find pleasure and satisfaction in, only to find it dissipates as quickly as it came.
Yes, so true.
But your brain needs that hit. So your brain will steer you to go clawing for more of that just to get the dopamine back, because we cannot stand the disequilibrium of an emotional up and down.
Yeah. Are there any practices that you have adopted over the years that have become habitual, have become a way of being for you, that create your equilibrium of, of this fulfillment to some degree? It's not always there. We bounce off it, but the place we return to, it seems that you've developed, a reasonably robust sense of inner peace and self-governed fulfillment. It reasonably, there's going to be times where we get knocked around, right? But you've been doing the work for quite a while, it sounds like. I'm wondering if there are any particular practices that have stuck for you, that have become habitual, that help you.
For me, certainly spiritual practices have been very helpful. Meditation, prayer, and keeping connection to faith. That's been a huge part of it. The last 3 years, I've been working with a dear friend who is going to be my co-author in the book that Scott just sold on origin stories.
Yep.
And he and I have been doing all the training together on neuroscience and trauma and IFS and spirituality and behavioral challenges, and so we've deeply entered one another's origin stories, and are each other's guides and Sherpas and mensches when needed, as we continue to evolve places where there are still wounds to be attended to.
Yeah.
I think having an ally in the journey, having a safe place to be truly known and seen outside of all the glamour.
Yeah.
And behind in all the words, I think having someone, it could be a therapist, it could be a coach, but somebody
Yeah.
whom you can tell it all,
Yeah.
is so critical.
So important. So important.
The secrets you keep, the identities you formed that you don't want people to know about, are the protector parts that will continue to exile you
Yeah.
behind armor
Yeah.
that will keep you from receiving the love you so crave.
Yes.
And
That's
in
so
order
true.
to give the love others crave from you.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I actually wrote about that too in my book, and it's about you can't heal as an island. And at the same time, there's work you need to do that's your work to do, but that work only becomes in relationship. So you can do all the work, but it has to become in relationship. And yeah, that's so
Community is
true.
the only place we transform.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Ron, if you could, would you change or undo anything in your life?
I have a long list.
Oh.
A long list.
If you had a magic wand, you'd go, that bit, edit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Right, delete.
Uh,
And what about if you deleted those things, but you were also then deleting the learnings that came from them?
well, now that I have the learning and there's quite a few scars, I would go back and apply it and to get a do-over. Yeah.
But what about if you deleted the event, if that also deleted the learnings that came from it?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, a more smooth path. I love that.
A couple of seasons where I made some ambitious moves that were probably just naive.
Yep.
And probably seeking something that I shouldn't have been seeking.
Yeah. And I mean, you gave some wonderful advice to your 7-year-old self before. And what about sliding door moments? What about those little quote unquote coincidences or synchronicities? Those little perchance things, you're walking down the street and you drop something, so you bend over to pick it up. And if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't have bumped into this person and you wouldn't have done that, and so on and so on. Can you think of any moments in your life, those little synchronicities or perchance moments that really opened up a whole pathway for you?
Oh my gosh. I have some great ones, but I'll tell you about a recent one because I think it's the one I'm still riding the joy of. And it's with this friend, Sebastian. I was teaching a coaching program, and it was a capstone for younger emerging talent. It was the capstone. It was a year-long program. It was the capstone weekend. And I was there to sort of drive him home. And the night before this final day was an evening celebration at a strange little taco restaurant in Brooklyn, New York. And I have spent a lot of time doing racial justice work in the last 5 years. And I happen to be talking about that with Sebastian, who also is a man of color. And it just became this really deep connection for him to understand he'd never heard a white man hearing about racial justice before. And I was enamored with his story. And at some point in the conversation, he mentioned he lived in Connecticut, where I live. So it was a great conversation. We got back to our hotel rooms. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder how he's getting home tomorrow. I thought, I wonder if I just text him and offer him a ride. And I wrestled with it. Is that going to be weird? Is he going to it's strange? I don't want to do that, but maybe he needs to ride home. But if I don't ask him sooner, he might make other arrangements. So at midnight, I finally just said, get over yourself and just send a text. And I sent the text. And I said, hey, how are you getting home tomorrow? And he said, I was just going to take the train. And I said, you want to ride? And I was like, oh, God. He said, sure. So after the day workshop was over, we got in the car and drove 2.5 hours to Connecticut, and then had a long dinner. And then that week saw each other 3 times. For he happened to be in the area with a client, and both of us would say that had I not sent that text, literally the course of our lives was changed because of that text. Fast forward now 3 years, and I'm getting on a call with Scott to pull the plug on this book. And Scott's opening line was, "Could you just fire me quickly so that I could just catch up as friends?" I'm not calling to fire you. You've not been able to sell this book. Clearly, the world is telling us it doesn't want it. And Sebastian had texted me that day, and he knew I was doing this. And he said, "Before you do it, what if I wrote it with you?"
Ah,
And I went, "Huh, that's an unlikely team the world could definitely turn ahead for."
yep.
So I raised it with Scott. I had already been through one co-author mess. I'm sure I was certain he wasn't going to want to do it again.
Yeah.
I said, just meet him. So Scott met Sebastian, texted me and said, "He's legit." So I said to Sebastian, "Go in the proposal and start to," he's a first-time author.
Yep.
Never done this before. I said, "Just make the proposal yours. Like, start to try and see how you would say those things." And I watched what he was doing of it in a shared document. And all of a sudden, instantly, I recognized that the previous 44 versions of the proposal over the last 3 years, my ambivalence was laced all through it.
Uh,
They were the most Melba-toast, nice,
yeah.
not me, proposals.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder it didn't sell.
Yeah.
But then I started getting the document as Sebastian would sort of, with everything we learned in the last 3 years, and I started writing the proposal for the book I wanted my name on, that I actually cared about. And I wanted to do it with him.
Yeah.
And he never sent that text. It would have never occurred to me. We did the proposal over, gave it to Scott on a Monday. Scott booked a meeting with a publisher on Friday of that week. So it's a 30-minute meeting. A publisher that he'd already said no. Scott, did he just remember that he said no? And Scott's like, "No, don't remind him." We on the call with this publisher. The 30-minute call now runs over an hour, like an hour and 15 minutes. And Scott had called, he was really nervous, but Scott wanted this book way more than I did.
Right.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
Now, for the first time, I'm now matching his desire.
Yeah.
And so he called me to say, here's what, coaching about how not to screw up the call. And what to say, what not to say. And I said, "Do you think we'll have any sense of his interest in the call?" He said, "Probably not, but we might."
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the call, he's asking us, "Well, what do you want in a publishing partner? What is important to you?" And, answering as best as we can. And as the call is sort of coming up on the hour, and I'm aware that we're way over time, he said, "Well, let me tell you why I think we could be a good partner for you." And I'm like, "Now you're pitching me? Like, what?
Yeah.
This is weird."
Yeah.
And I'm watching Scott's face to see, what, any cues. So he tells us all that. I'm like, "That's great." We asked some questions. Sebastian asked questions. And at the end of that, as we're about to hang up, the publisher looks at Scott and says, "Well, I'll have the offer to you as soon as we're done."
Huh.
And I'm like, 3 years and 1 week. Again, to your point about serendipity,
Yeah.
had Sebastian never sent that text, this book wouldn't have been born.
Yeah.
And I start to go ask questions of like, what, and Scott's like, "Shut up, just shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let it be. Don't talk about it."
Yeah.
He's just confused.
Yeah.
So, this relationship has had 2 moments in it that had a text not been sent. The course of history, literally of our histories,
Yeah.
would have been very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I love
and
that.
I've been very blessed all through my life
Mm.
to have had those moments where I sensed a signal and, was curious enough and maybe dumb enough and a little bit brave enough to sort of scratch.
Yep.
And I think those are the moments that the world, universe invites us to discover more of ourselves. I think I love this. For me, was a great example of, I love Goethe's quote, the German philosopher. He said, "At the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you."
Yeah.
And I think that was what this moment was for me, is I finally committed
Yeah.
and it brought up.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I'm curious, what's your take or intuition or or belief or faith, or how do you view the machinations, the workings behind what we can see, the workings of the universe, how it all kind of, in terms of that moment, you and Sebastian happening to meet, and then you making a choice. You could have either not texted or texted, and you texted and he replied. What's your sense on the way it all works?
So for me, that's a God. Those are God moments. Those are
Right.
I believe in God, and I believe that that's, you know, I don't I don't see God as a puppeteer. I
No.
think we have choice, but those are signals.
Yeah.
You can can feel a sense of your spirit wanting to respond or not. And I think I've learned over the years that there are certain fears or anxiety, certain turbulences that are signals to actually respond, not to retreat. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I've learned that if you don't pay attention to those, there are consequences.
Yeah.
If you do pay attention to them, there are positive consequences. And I think I've learned over the years to not question, to not doubt, to not shrink, to just respond and obey the call,
Yeah.
respond to the signal, and trust. And sometimes you never get to know the outcome.
Yep.
You've delivered, you've shown care, you've loved somebody that needed to be loved. Sometimes you get to see the outcome, sometimes you don't. But that's not the point of a signal. The
Yeah.
point of a signal is to summon you.
Yep.
You respond to the summons. You don't get to control the outcome. That's not your job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So God for you is God, the life force behind everything is the consciousness, the source, the intelligence. Is it the field, or can you just give me a little bit more on what God is for you?
A creator, a loving presence, who I think, this, in spite of us, loves his creation and calls us to love in response ourselves and each other,
Yeah,
which we're not very good at, but doesn't change the mandate.
yeah, yeah,
And I think to be loving presences in the world.
yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I really love that. That's got a lot to do with the mission I'm on and the reason I'm here. Hey, you and I wouldn't have met if it wasn't for one of those little moments, which also involves Scott Miller.
Yeah.
I was going for a run one day, and instead of listening to the same podcasts that I always listen to, I also, like you, behaviorally, I need variety. I get bored. And so I went for a run, and I literally did a spin on the podcast thing on my Apple Podcasts. I just span it and hit a random podcast and just pressed play. I had no idea what I was going to listen to, and I went for a run. And Scott was being interviewed on someone else's podcast. It wasn't his Franklin Covey on leadership. It was him as a guest. I'm just running along and listening to this guy who I had no idea who he was, and his name was Scott Miller. And he was talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and he was super positive and super optimistic and just bang, 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 bang. And I'd just written my book and published it here in Australia. And I thought, I'm going to reach out to this guy. I just had this feeling, I'm going to email this guy, Scott Miller, and ask for his advice. And I kid you not, 5 minutes later in the interview that I was listening to, he was saying to people, hey, if you want help, reach out for help. If you want, he said, email me, scott@scottmiller.com. If you want to reach out to Seth Godin, seth@sethgodin.com. If you want to reach out to Dan Pink, he said, reach out to people. Don't hold back. Ask for help. 5 minutes after I thought, I'm going to email this guy. So I went home, finished my run, and I was still covered in sweat. And I emailed Scott Miller. And I emailed Seth Godin, and I emailed Dan Pink, because I'd been reading their stuff for a long time. All three of them emailed me back personally within 24 hours. And I was like, what? I'm this little guy down in Australia. No one knows who I am. Why are they? Their inboxes are going to have thousands of emails. They're not going to reply. All three of them did. And Scott and I ended up becoming friends and having lunch in Newport Beach, and he's publishing my books. And anyway, and so now you and I got to meet as well. So thank you, universe. Thank you, God. Thank you, Scott.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny. About 11 years ago, I hired a coach for me to sort of take my own medicine. I was stalking her on LinkedIn, and she caught me. And so she said, hey, I see you hanging out. Can I help? I'm like, oh. So I said, I think I have a client for you. And I didn't tell it was me. And, long story short was I hired her, and she again changed the course of my life. This is before I had Rising to Power. I come out and I didn't know what to, like. It was a great book. It actually was very successful, and I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't understand how to use thought leadership as a way to attract clients, and I didn't understand how it worked. I was completely clueless. And this is a woman who was like the thought leader of thought leaders, and the one who got me started on my HBR career, got me on my first Forbes contract, got me all my TED Talks. Like, she's the one that just was the engine behind all of my ability to build a body of work. But she was very smart in how she dosed the work for me. Because had she told me what the plan was, I would have run. So after we get up this editorial calendar, I'm writing. She says, "Well, who are the people in your world that you admire?" And I'm like, "Well, I think a lot of people in my world are hacks." I know. She goes, "No, seriously, who do you admire?" So I texted one of the partners in my firm saying, "Who have you heard me say that I like?"
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, you like Daniel Kahneman, and you like John Haidt, and you like Susan King." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do like them." I have no idea why she's asking me these questions.
Yeah.
So I sent her 5 or 6 names.
Yeah.
She says, "Great. I want you to call them all up and interview them for Forbes."
Ah.
I'm like, did you see whose names are on the list?
Yeah.
Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winner. Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah.
These people are not going to take my call. She goes, "They will. Just tell them you want you write for Forbes. You admire their work, and you want to talk to them." I'm like, "I'm not going to. No, I'm not. I'm not going to make a fool of myself. I'm not going to do it." And then now I think she's lost her mind.
Yeah.
And finally, she's like, "Just do it." So I did, and all of them said yes. Dan Cable was about to go on sabbatical, so he said no. All of them said yes. John Haidt became a friend. I joined 2 of his boards, and he actually ended up writing the foreword, to be honest.
There you go.
And now The Anxious Generation is out, and he's changing the world.
Yeah.
I actually think your country is leading the way in that work, in cell phones, not in schools, whatever. I think Australia is doing some amazing things.
Yeah.
Thanks to his research. But if I had not obeyed her,
Yeah.
super reluctantly,
Yeah.
and certain I was going to embarrass myself, what would have happened? So, I worked with her for 8. Now she and I are really good friends, but 8 years of her work in my life. Dramatic. My family actually literally uses the term Ron pre-story and post-story.
Right.
Like, they actually see her as a delineation in my life, and it's actually not inaccurate.
Did you remember how you stumbled across her LinkedIn profile?
I don't. I just saw, but I saw Leonard Schlesinger called her the guy from Harvard, said she's the thought leader of thought leaders.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
But she was engaging. I saw some of her videos. This was before she was famous.
Yeah.
Well, but she's early in her life now. She hasn't even doing much coaching.
Yeah.
And so when I got the call, and I'm realizing, oh my God, I'm judging her. I'm like evaluating her as a consultant. I'm like, stop, just listen.
Yeah.
And so she said, "Do you want to try 6 months?" I said, "Could we just try the diagnostic part first to make sure we both think I'm actually helpable, but go too far?"
Coachful. Yeah.
And so she went off and did her diagnosis and came back. And I remember it was a Sunday morning when her report came in, and I could feel my stomach tightening. I had my palms sweating, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is what it's like to be on the other side of me."
Yeah.
And so I read the report, and it was, of course, very activating. I got defensive. I got sad. I cried. I was frustrated. I'm like, "Oh, she's right." And hope, and the whole roller coaster.
Yeah.
And it was very insightful and very true and hard to read, but I got it. But, so when I do my work with my clients, there's our feedback report, and then there's what we call the Navalent point of view. Here's our take on your data. And what was missing for me was, okay, but what do you think? And so I said, "This is great. Thank you. When we get together this week to review the data, I'd love for you to come with your thoughts on these questions." And I said like 5 questions. 3 hours later, I had like a 5-page email full of gold, all the things I needed to hear and wanted her to say. And 6 months turned into 9 years.
Yeah, wonderful. And there was pre-story and post-story. Yeah.
And Jim, if I could tell you the difference, like it's a marked difference.
Yeah.
when I think about the body of work now, not just the body of work is wonderful, and I've gotten wonderful accolades. I met some wonderful clients, and I know I've made a difference in people who've read my work, and I get lots of I just published an article this week on the fall of democracy. It was a really gutsy article for me to write. And I got a note from a man last night saying that meant the world to me. I know I've been chicken to talk, but you convicted me to go that I have to speak out.
What's the what? I'm really, really curious on that article. Sorry, I'm just going to jump into that now. The fall of democracy, because I was hoping to have time to ask you about the state of humanity at the moment and the future, the immediate and the distant. The fall of democracy, yes, and give me something from that. Give me one of your points that you.
I don't think it's unique to the United States. I think it's happening in Europe as well, which is it's the authoritarian playbook rearing its head again. Yeah. And the article is I actually wrote it for myself, just to sort of say, as people would make comparisons to 1933 Germany and United States. I'm like, well, is that extreme? Is that just being dropped? Is there really a comparison here? And I didn't want to compare the leaders. I wanted to compare the playbook. I wanted to compare the policy, the scapegoating, the extreme policy changes, loyalism, co-opting religion. Like I wanted to see the plays to see how comparable were they. Policy by policy, law by law, change by change. Like I just went into great detail to sort of do side-by-side comparison for my own sanity. And of course, was devastated to see the parallels. They're almost cut and paste.
Wow. Yeah.
I wasn't going to publish the article. And then I wrote about, I wanted to understand why the disenfranchised find so much hope and power that exploits them.
Yeah.
And that's such a strange relationship. And why don't they see they're being exploited? And I discovered the whole term called trauma loyalty. It's actually an effect where you just can't bear the notion that it's true.
Yeah.
So you double down on your loyalty because the truth is just unbearable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And used it.
Yeah. So why were you not going to publish it, and then why did you publish it?
It's a great question. I was scared. I was just nervous. It wasn't its purpose. But the more and more I've seen people speaking out, speaking their piece, saying their views courageously and challenging people's narrowed assumptions and dangerous assumptions, I got more courage. But Sunday, this was just 2 days ago, Sunday, I read a paper by a man who I've adored my whole career. His name is Manfred Kestevries. He's French. He works at INSEAD. He's 83 years old. And he'd been publishing these little papers on his Medium and LinkedIn threads for almost a year now. And I read everywhere. He's just brilliant. But he wrote this one on violence and why violence is in the narrative script of America and how that happens and how it gets reinforced. It was brilliant. It was sobering. I mean, you guys have just experienced a tragedy at Bondi Beach.
Yeah.
We experienced on the same weekend the tragedy at Brown University. And his exegesis of that and the narrative of our current political system was so brilliant and so courageous to say it. I thought if an 86-year-old man in France can do this, I can do this. I published it. It had 10,000 reads inside 4 hours.
Yeah.
A thread of comments I had never seen on my LinkedIn page before.
Yeah.
And I wanted to provoke a conversation. I just wanted people to understand I didn't write this to make a political statement. I wrote this because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And we the people, this is history doesn't offer prediction. It offers a warning. And history is not repeating itself, but it sure is rhyming.
Yeah.
And we have choices. Those choices will narrow and eventually they will run out. We don't have to wait to make choices now. And we don't. And I said, I needed to jar myself out of my own denial. And this work did that. And I said, I hope it jars you out of yours sooner than it did me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for writing it. I'm going to go and read it today in between recording and clients. I'm going to go and read it and share it. I so other than voicing our truth or our fears or our what we're feeling for some people who don't write, what can we do? What do you think the average Joe in society, is there anything we can do to try and help tip the scales in the right direction?
We have to talk, create community, connect. The isolation leads to silence. Silence is complicity. You have to speak out. You don't have to be disrespectful. You don't have to be judgmental. You don't have to be harsh. I don't think outrage works to compel. Compassion, but firmness does. And we have to talk about it. We don't have to convert people, but facts compel. And personal stories compel. You do not have to yield to people want to believe this is about left versus right. It was never about left versus right. It was always about top versus bottom.
Yeah.
And they do not want us to see their little sleight of hand maneuver, because once we unite, we outnumber them.
Yeah.
But we have to start looking up, not at each other.
Yeah.
And realize that this is all about the consolidation of power and wealth.
Yeah.
It's not about ideology. It's not about theology. It's not about politics even. Those are all just great smoke screens.
Yep.
To hide what's really happening. And if we can bring ourselves to face that truth, we can come together across our differences.
Yeah.
And realize that there is so much more that unites us than divides us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Amen to that. And whether it's pro-life or pro-choice or pro-vax or anti-vax or any of these binary situations that they can distract us with, and people get bought into, I just listening to you then, Ron, I feel to hopefully inspire people. If you come across someone who has a completely differing point of view to you, lean into them with curiosity, lean into that, make conversation, seek to understand. I'm not saying you have to agree with them, but lean into it. Or even if you're scrolling and you see something that inflames you or infuriates you, pause for a second.
It's data.
Right?
Just pause.
Yeah.
And the reality is, you probably have more in common with that person than you think.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll go back to two words you said I think were super insightful, Jem, which was polarity, which we're not polarized. These are not binary decisions. It's not, these are not equal. There are gradations. Yeah. And they are intended to be distractions.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are sleight of hand maneuvers to turn your head another way while they're over here doing something else. That's what they are. They're not, but they work. If you went back and compared Hungary, Mussolini in Italy, Stalin, the playbook is exactly the same.
Right.
The there's at least seven clearly detectable strategies that get used, and they're not even creative. They are the cut and paste. It's almost boring to see how badly replicated they are. There's not even a unique spin on them.
Yeah.
And why we can't recognize them for what they are is so baffling to me, or why we're so unable and so refusing. And I think it's sunk cost, right? If I were to accept the truth of this, what does that say about me? What does it say? What other things do I have to completely unwind in my whole life?
Yeah.
That got me to believe certain things that now I have to completely rethink. That's terrifying.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you for having the courage, because in this current chapter of history that we're in now, and for you in the States and also for us here in Australia, you say something or express an opinion, and your whole Saturday Night Live TV show can get shut down, kind of thing, right? So I understand the hesitation, because there can be very real ramifications for you in terms of your ability to put bread and butter on the table.
Sure.
So thank you for having the courage to share your assertion of what's going on. I'm looking forward to going and reading it. Ron, I'm aware of your time, and I want to be respectful of it. I could keep talking to you for a long time. I find it fascinating. Is there anything that we haven't touched on or spoken about that you'd love to bring into the conversation?
I think we cut a lot of ground, Jim. I'm glad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, maybe just one little pearl of I'm not going to say wisdom, just something that you figured out along your unknown path, and just something you figured out that works for you that you'd like to share.
I'm still very blessed to have a mentor. She's 86 now. She's been my mentor for 35 years. She wrote my first book with me. We taught at a graduate program together at Fordham University. She's been a dear, dear friend and love to me. And she told me years ago, I think she got this from her mom. She said, nothing in life is irrevocable except death. And if you could actually act as if that were true, you would take more chances and swing for more fences. We get doers. Go down swinging, and don't not, we've all heard the cliches about life's about the shots you don't take. And I think that's really true, that, it's, we have less to lose than we think.
Yeah. I love that, mate. That's a beautiful way to round out the conversation and come to our organic close of this show for today. Man, thank you so much, Ron, for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, and thank you for your patience in us getting a date to work for both.
Jim, it's been a delight talking to you, and I wish you all the best and the great work you're doing there in Australia.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. And to you, the listener, thank you. You made it through to another episode. I reckon it was probably pretty easy to hang around for this one. I was on the edge of my seat. I'm guessing you were too. If you're still here and you've made it to the end, you get your smiley face and your gold stamp. And I will see you, or you will hear me, in the next episode. For now, take care, speak up, and love your life while you got it. Bye for now.